As we learned in that last segment, we talked about the motivation behind evangelism. We talked about what it means to have a heart for evangelism. And as Christians, many of us desire to introduce people to Christ, but we don't really understand how, or we don't have the tools to do that. So many of us come across as trying to present something because we believe that it's our duty to present the gospel to people.
I know how you are, like the back of my hand, alone, Ohio, what a river bend.
So as we take steps of faith, we are expected to see God move. So we see it more as us taking a step of faith out to the people around us. And we know from Romans 1 that the gospel is the power of salvation for all who believe. So before we take steps of faith, usually we are pretty scared. And as we are taking a step of faith, we can endure anything. We can endure persecution, punishment, anything like that if we believe that God is going to work through what we are doing. But sometimes it would seem that through all of this, what we are saying is lost in the translation. In our trying to step out in faith, in our trying to present something to the people outside, it could get lost in translation. Perhaps even in our heart of hearts, when we are trying to serve the Lord, we are looking at evangelism in the wrong manner. Perhaps what we are trying to communicate with people isn't actually what they are understanding. Too often we can take a me-centered focus of evangelism. We think evangelism is all about us taking steps of faith. It's all about us serving the Lord. And we have to begin to ask questions: what is it appearing to other people? How am I communicating the gospel to other people? How are other people reacting to me? And when I take steps of faith, perhaps it's coming off very different to the people around me than what I think it is. Perhaps in our trying to communicate the gospel, we are actually communicating something very different than what we want to say. Even in our heart of hearts, as we try to share Christ with people, we need to ask ourselves if we are really sharing Christ, or are we sharing some religious jargon or things that we want to say. We too often have a me-centered idea of evangelism. Evangelism is about me taking a step of faith and sharing the gospel with you. Evangelism is about me telling you what you need to hear. Evangelism is about me giving you something that you need. And instead, we need to look more at what we are communicating with people and what they are understanding from us. Because for us, it could seem something very different than what they are actually hearing from us. So as we begin to look at evangelism in a different way, we shift our thinking from thinking about how I am presenting the gospel to how someone is receiving the gospel. We need to understand that every person is on a spiritual journey, and for us to best communicate the gospel to them, we need to understand where they are at. And probably the most effective way to do that is to ask questions. We need to become an explorer of the people's lives around us. What we need to do is we need to explore where they've been, where they are at now, and where they are going. Questions that would explore where they have been are questions like, what was your religious background as a child? Did you grow up in the church? Are you a church-going person? Does your family go to church? Questions that would talk about where they are now would be questions such as, how would you describe your spiritual belief? Or maybe, who is Jesus to you? Or what's your understanding of Jesus? And questions that describe where they are going would be questions like, lately, have you been moving toward God, away from God, or kind of stay the same? Or how would you rate your desire to know God personally? These are all questions that come off not as us standing up here with a sign telling you what you need to know, but really opening people up so that they can truly have an opportunity to respond to the gospel and not respond to us trying to tell them something. As Christians, we need to begin to understand how to connect with people and introduce the gospel into that relationship. The gospel is the power of salvation for those who believe, and we need to figure out how to open up people's hearts so that the gospel can touch them.